that. And our speaker, Stacy Stevenson, she is currently the Academic Program Coordinator for Kent State University's School of Journalism and Mass Communication online MA program. After working as a journalist online, on air, and in print for several years, she earned a master's in journalism with a focus in online ethics. Currently, she is completing a PhD in educational technology at Kent State, focusing on instructional technology. Past publications have focused on the ethics of Google, intent and ethics in social media, and more. Her dissertation is looking at how students might use smartphones in their learning strategies while working on individual learning projects. Stacy, we're glad to have you here today. Thank you.
Is an area that's grown so much, so fast, just in the last 2 years. I'm really interested in the statistics that are out regarding mobile right now, so I'm going to kind of try to hit on a couple of those statistics because I think it's interesting to look at who's using the technology, what they're using it for, how often, and the age brackets that they fall into, because I think that's where we find a lot of useful information. But to start, so I think it's interesting for, I'm sure most people in this room, and as I've been told when I go to teach a class every once in a while, well, are you 12? I'm not, and I actually remember when we had phones with cords. And I remember very distinctly the cord that reached around the house. Like you could take it somewhere to hide from your parents, so you're talking on the phone to someone, you get one in your ear, and that cord really went like all around the house. And that, as time went on, I was trying to think about when do I remember phones losing those cords or becoming more mobile and things like that. And my mother's a home health nurse, and I think about this often because I thought it was really cool that she came home with a phone in a bag. You remember these? They were like on the forefront of this cellular technology, and you know, we think of kind of what we laugh at now, the phones in the cars and things like that. But you know, she had this phone in a bag, and she took to all her patients' houses with her, and I thought that was really cool. And like, we were on the forefront of technology in our house. We had a phone in a bag. And as I think as people will see, as we develop technology and these things grow, and if you lose your cord, you get a cell phone. They were flip phones, now they're smartphones. They've got touch screens. Flip phones are supposedly coming back, but I'm not buying it. Is that things do tend to come full circle, and what people are sort of seeing now is kind of interesting. I know in our house we reinstituted the landline, and we made our kids learn to use a rotary dial phone, kind of just for fun. But it was also, we felt like, you know, hey, if there's somewhere they need to dial a phone, they need to be able to dial a phone. And so like we have a rotary dial phone right now. But you'll see things now like Amazon is building brick and mortar stores. Amazon was always online, but they're actually starting to look at real physical stores where they're not really full of a lot of products, but you can come in and maybe touch and feel some stuff and then order online. So there's a little bit of a trend that is, you know, going, everything's digital, everything's online, and you can see a little bit of a swoop down where some of these all online things are actually looking at, people are asking for things in person now again. So, you know, things tend to ebb and flow. So the first thing I wanted to kind of talk about was that there's a difference between an app and just a mobile website. Some of you may know this, some of you may not, and I just thought that this would be helpful. And if you're looking at the technology for your organization, for your students, for your business, you need to evaluate what you need. So the main difference, I think, that most people would recognize is the mobile app you have to download. You have to go to the iPhone store or the Android store, the Google store, and you download something that then becomes an icon on your phone. If you're using just a mobile website, it may kind of seem like you're on an app. It has maybe a little bit of a streamlined appearance, but it's not an app. And these things do function differently. Usually an app, you can use at least some of the functions offline if you don't have a signal. Not all the functions are always available offline. And apps tend to make use of the functions that make us really want those smartphones, which is the camera, the GPS navigation, location services, things like that. Mobile websites can be more cost effective, perhaps, but I think they limit some of the features that an app will give you. And then of course, there's a hybrid. There's something in between that allows you to sort of use both functions. So again, if you're thinking about, do we need this, what do we need, what kind do we need, a lot of that depends on your audience, obviously, and I think a lot of times the answer is both. That there's a place for a mobile website. The mobile website is going to be a more streamlined version, easier to navigate version of your full website, but a mobile app is going to offer different functions. It usually allows people to interact more with the interface, to do things, to accomplish things, to receive things, that kind of thing. And whereas a mobile website doesn't always necessarily offer those kind of things. So, jumping into my favorite part, a lot of these statistics I just think are so telling. And if you don't know what ComScore is a measurement company. So they're a cross-platform measurement company. They measure audiences, brands, consumer behavior, kind of like Nielsen, but they've been much more focused. And Nielsen is sort of focusing a lot more on some of the digital platforms too. But they've always focused on websites and now cross-platform things like mobile and cellular. So time spent on digital media. This was a measurement of time spent on digital media. And it's grown. This was the report for all of 2015, so obviously 2016 they're still measuring, or just starting to measure. But it's exploded. It's grown nearly 50% in the past 2 years. 3/4 of that growth is attributed to mobile apps only. That's a huge amount of time spent on digital media. And a couple different ways to look at this. Mobile is the leading digital platform. Total activity on smartphones and tablets accounts for 62% of digital media time spent. And apps alone represent the majority of that time at 54%. So just over half of all time spent on digital media is through apps. And I like to look at numbers in a couple different ways, and a perspective on that is, of every 3 media minutes, almost 2 of those minutes are mobile. So all media, all together, that people are consuming, every 3 minutes of that, almost 2 is on a mobile device. And mobile in this sense, we define as tablet and smartphone, or tablet and cell. And, definitions tend to vary from research to research, but in ComScore considers mobile to be smartphone and tablet. They don't consider laptop mobile, and I've debated that with people that feel like a laptop is not necessarily a mobile device, even though you can transport it from place to place. You're not going to walk down the street and take a picture of it and see people do that. You don't use it in the same way that you use a smartphone or a tablet. So again, that's a lot of time spent on mobile media, consuming mobile media. So, some more numbers. And here's where we get into some of the age brackets. There's a ton of research out there. Pew Research obviously has some of the best breakdowns and the most current breakdowns of usage. And I have a little bit more on that later on, but this was something I found interesting as I'm working with high school and junior high students right now in some research for smartphones. This was from an education company that deals with online exams and different online education applications. And their research showed that almost 3/4, 74% of teenagers say that they access the internet on cell phones and tablets more than any other mobile device. And I think that's an important thing to remember. I'll mention in a little bit. Different groups of people, the smartphone, their phone is their primary access point to the web. They don't have broadband at home. They don't have a desktop computer at home. Maybe they go to the library, maybe they don't, but their primary access point is on a smartphone or a tablet. And I thought this was an interesting comparison or statistic, is that there are currently almost 7 billion mobile phones in the world, and that's almost as many as there are people. So I don't know who's carrying 3. I've seen that. I don't want to be copied. But that's a lot of cell phones. And when I think of that from an education standpoint, I feel like that's that's a lot of people that I can reach. If I want to educate someone, if I want to reach someone, if I want to advertise to someone, I'm going to reach the most people, probably, on that platform. This guy. I put this in here because I thought it was really interesting about online dating. Young people in particular, but it's actually across all age groups. There is a study done that showed that there's been a huge increase in the use of online dating services, but specifically mobile dating apps. So 22% of 18 to 24-year-olds say that they've used a mobile dating app. And there was a fourfold increase from 5% in 2013 to the end of 2015. It went up that much. They're using, more than any other age group, they're using mobile dating apps. It's one of the most used services. For me, it's weather. Oh, I look at the weather last. So online dating. So if you're marketing something, if you're looking for a place to advertise something, I would say you're going to reach a lot of people. And again, the statistic was for all age groups. There's been another leap in some older age groups with online dating apps. So they're, I guess, sitting around with their phone on the couch on Friday night, and they decide they really would like to be out with someone, so they're looking at dating apps. So another part of this, and I'm sure you've probably heard here and there, there's lots of stories about neuroscience and smartphones. How our brains work now that we're using these phones all the time, and if it's changing our brains and so on. So basically, I thought one of the most interesting things was that there's a part of our brain that's getting larger because we're using it more. Can anybody guess what part of the brain? It's this somatosensory cortex. Can anybody guess what it controls in relation to smartphone? What?
Your hands.
Thumbs. Just your thumb. Which I find, mine must be shrinking. I can't use my thumb when I use the phone. I see people do it, but I can't. It's like the chicken pecking version of smartphone use. But that part of our brain is getting bigger. And it's getting bigger within a week or two of usage. So you get your first smartphone, and within the first 2 weeks, that part of your brain has gotten stronger from using your thumbs. And I find that absolutely fascinating. They related some of the research, interestingly, to, they're sort of looking at comparing traumatic brain injury folks, people who have had strokes, and how to rehabilitate them with a little bit of the science, because they looked at piano players who tend to be better learners. Piano players use their hands all the time. That part of their brain gets stronger, and subsequently a lot of other parts of the brain tend to be healthier or stronger. So they've used that concept with some stroke victims, get them using their hands and the fine motor skills quickly, get them doing things. So people are looking at, well, can smartphones make us smarter then? Not necessarily to the content that we're pumping through them, but just by the fact that we're using our hands. So there's a lot of research going on in that area that I think is really interesting. And again, they can rehabilitate brain injury, stroke victims, simply through giving them a tablet or a smartphone. They're using their hands more and that kind of development. I think that's great. Ericsson, which is originally a mobile phone company, I think they do some other things outside of that, but Ericsson did some research recently that I also found very interesting that found that a very short delay in loading web pages or video caused mobile users' heart rates to rise 38%. We've become so impatient. Remember dial-up? You guys remember dial-up? Remember how you could go do the dishes and come back, and laundry and come back, and then you'd be connected? And now we just expect it to be there. We just expect it to be there. So heart rates are rising 38%. Obviously, a delay-free experience triggered positive reactions. So if you're marketing something, your audience had a much more positive relation to your brand if there was no delay. And the delay in being able to access the content, I thought this was interesting. I'll jump ahead. I don't know if you can read this. The first one says, so these are cognitive load associations with stress situations. Waiting in line at a retail store, not too bad. Watching a melodramatic TV show, not too bad. Starts to go up. Standing on the edge of a virtual cliff, I'm not really sure what kind of virtual cliffs they're talking about, but then you've got these three here. Watching a horror movie, which I personally cannot do. Experiencing mobile delays, solving a math problem. Experiencing a mobile delay for most people was the same as taking a math test in stress. I'm not sure if that's how I feel when my video won't load, but I know I don't stay around too long. If my content's not loading, I need to go look at something else. So I found this to be very interesting. So if you're marketing, if you're teaching, if you're doing anything with your audience online, you want them to feel good about it, try to avoid the delays, I guess. Go back. So through this research, Erickson also found, they coined a new term, nomophobia. Can you guess what nomophobia means?
No more phobia.
What's that?
Fear of you losing your phone.
Fear of being without connection, basically. Fear of not being able to connect on your phone, fear of not finding it. I will admit to a lot of panic when I leave the house and head on my long commute and realize I don't have my phone. And I try to convince myself that it'll be okay. And I usually go back for it. You think about, traffic is probably the one thing that I always think about with the phone, like how did I deal with this? I traveled a lot before I had a cell phone. I had traffic incidents, I was in accidents. I remember trying to knock on someone's door for help and then turning the light off, you know, and I'm like, okay, well the phone does help out in some of those situations. And FOMO, some of you may have heard of this, is a big deal with social media and cell phones and this technology, is the fear of missing out, FOMO. And marketers and people developing brands, they really play on this concept that people really do fear missing out. That's why you check Facebook as much as you do. That's why your kids check Facebook as much as they do. Social media really just lives on this concept. And you know, I have a couple things to say later on about sort of the ethics of some of this stuff. But obviously that's a pretty strong marketing technique. It works. So, looking at education, I found this to be interesting, and I just have to say that if I had a job as futurist, I would take it, because that's a really cool title, and I think it would be fun to sit around and talk about what the future's going to be like. But Alvin Toffler said this about education. The illiterate of the 21st century will not be those who cannot read and write. The illiterate will be those who cannot learn, unlearn, and learn. And what, I just came back from a conference on online education, and mobile was a huge part of that talk. A lot of the discussions were about mobile and what's happening and where we're going. And what they're finding, you know, there's a lot of talk about the unbundling of education, which is kind of scary if you're an educator, and you're on one side of educating. And I really don't know where it's going. I don't really know the place for everything, but if you think about when you want to know something now, if you're at home, you're thinking about, I want to learn to knit, I want to learn to cook this, I want to learn to do that, you go to YouTube. Most of us will go to Google, you find a video, you watch it. It's kind of like, it's like step towards the matrix, you know. My daughter used to think that if she just watched it on TV, she could do it. It's pretty close. You can learn a lot online. You can go and pick up these little skills that you want to have pretty quickly. And obviously we've heard a lot about things like Coursera and iTunes U and all of these different companies that aren't necessarily educationally based, but they're putting out modular content. They're putting out bite-sized pieces of educational information, and people are consuming it. And there's a lot of talk about what's the university's role in this, and what might the university's role in the future be, and what can be done with all of this modular content. And this, I kind of jumped to the bottom, but like the personalized learning pathways. Students still need to be mentored, they still need to have a path, they still need to have an organized set of goals where they just have a bunch of YouTube videos. And I think everybody realizes that. But that's what a lot of the big conversations were about, is unbundling what's happening. Mobile plays a large part in that. I wanted to say real quick about M-learning and mobile learning. It's sort of just a definitions thing. M-learning usually refers to learning on the go is a little bit of a simplification, but it's really about ubiquity and the fact that there are pedagogical practices being developed that encompass M-learning. The fact that students should be able to integrate their day. Maybe part of their day is actually part of their learning. Maybe the course is in their pockets and they have to gather information from their day, or they're able to apply what they're learning from their mobile consumption to their work environment. So there's not, I feel like there's not a lot of really solid defined practices at this point, but they're coming. And there's a lot of research being done. Part of the research I'm doing right now is with Lakeside Junior High and High School and looking at whether they've already developed their own learning strategies through their smartphones. Are they using those devices to complete independent learning projects on their own already? Is that what they go to first, or are they still looking for teacher, friend, parents, assistants? Are they looking at books? Are they looking on computers? And if they're actually able to develop learning strategies with their mobile devices. So that's what I'm looking at right now. I'm hoping very soon I'll have some results and happy to share them. One of the things with some of the unbundling, they talk a lot about a new, there's sort of a new pathway. So the old model was you get an education, you go into full-time employment, and then you retire, if you're lucky. And now it seems like the trends have been you get an education, and then you're in a learning and earning phase. I think the financial reality for most people is that you got to work while you learn. And so there's this new phase of learning and earning, and then it's full-time on-the-job training. We continue to learn. So we have a full-time position, but it's not stagnant. Things are pretty dynamic, and you learn as you learn in your full-time job, or you should be. And then there's a phase of transitioning to retirement, where you're probably working, and then you retire. So looking at that, this is an author, Jeff Salingo. He's an education author and tech author, and he writes a lot about life after college and what's going on in those trends. And I think that definition is kind of interesting, and I think it's pretty appropriate too. Because if we look at, I have this mergers, LinkedIn and lynda.com. If you've noticed, I think we're this learning and earning and on-the-job training. LinkedIn bought lynda.com, and if you know what lynda.com is a website, a database of modular workshops. You can learn just about anything, any kind of software, Photoshop, Excel, you name it. It covered a lot of ground. I actually used to use it as a textbook in a multimedia class. Because it's hard to find a book that teaches students how to edit video, and I mean, there's books, but these were things they could watch and do. LinkedIn bought lynda.com, and I think this is a brilliant strategy. So LinkedIn is all data. It knows everything about everything that you put in there, about your job history. It knows what jobs you're looking at. It knows what things you've searched for. It has all the data. It will look and see, oh, you looked at a job recently that you're missing 2 skills in your resume on LinkedIn, your profile on LinkedIn. You're missing 2 skills that this job requires. We'd like to offer you a workshop on those 2 skills from lynda.com. Brilliant. You take the workshops from lynda.com. You feel proficient, so you can put it on your resume. But they're offering this connection between what skills you lack, what skills you might want, what jobs you're looking at, and then where to get them. And to get them right there and right then. And then save it later, sit at home, watch it on your phone. You know, all these things are connected. I find that LinkedIn and lynda.com merger interesting. I mean, all the data collection aside and how we might feel about that, the mechanism itself, I think, is brilliant. Leveraging text messaging, just real quick, I think there's a lot of interesting things that have gone on with text messaging in lower economic areas, third world countries, developing nations, where they're able to pump educational content very simply to their community. Students who are working on literacy skills, if they don't use it, they lose it. Through simple text messaging, they're able to allow these people to practice their literacy skills. And I've always felt that that's where cell phones and smartphones are such amazing tools, because you can reach the people who otherwise don't have the resource. Lower economic brackets and lower education brackets are still using this technology more than any other technology that's available to them. And to me, that speaks a lot to what we could be doing with this technology to reach people who need resources. So my little bit of a cautionary tale. So the rest of my background is in ethics. So I'm really interested in technology and ethics. Are we developing technology ethically? Is it the developer's responsibility to develop ethical technology, or is it society's responsibility to use it ethically? That's always sort of the debate. Obviously, we have to think a little bit about these devices are obviously addictive. Science has showed us that we get a dopamine response from using our cell phones. It makes us happy. We continue to do it. It's a loop. And I find it interesting then that I get sent things like, here's a meditation app, which I have to look at for a minute and go, this person is a genius. They're making money off of an app that has you sit quietly and not do anything. But I had to download it, and if I want to use any more of the content, I got to pay for it. Brilliant. But I think it's interesting because it's not really the high-level thinking part of our brain that gets that real feel good from using these devices or accomplishing something on these devices. It's the eighth portion of our brain that just likes novelty. So I think that we do have to be careful about that, that aspect of it. And then I think for you guys here, I think the interesting things that I have always thought of in terms of my community and education, resources, and development, there's some information from Pew Research Center that I think is interesting. I've already kind of mentioned that 10% of Americans own a smartphone, but do not have broadband at home. So it's a decent chunk of people who are accessing the internet on their phone. 15% of who own a smartphone say that they have a limited number of options for going online other than their phone. Those people are relatively low income, low educational attainment levels, they're younger adults, non-whites, and they are likely to be smartphone dependent. And I think that speaks volumes. If we're looking at providing resources, if we're looking at providing education, if we're looking at reaching groups of people who are hard to access sometimes, I think that's really the answer. I feel pretty strong about that. They're widely used for navigating numerous important life activities, health conditions. We love posting our runs on an app. We like to see what we've accomplished. It helps us to see what our friends are doing. Oh, she's working out. I gotta go work out. It works. It works. And I think health is another area where these kind of devices, these applications, are a huge benefit. If we can do something positive with these apps, that's definitely an area. That's been proven. We do better. We count our calories, we look at our food, we eat healthier, and we work out more successfully when we're charting those things on our personal devices and our friends can see it. Lower income folks who are smartphone dependent are especially likely to be using those devices to navigate job and employment resources. That might be the only place that they can check into those things. Maybe they can't drive to the library, maybe they can't get to where they need to go, but they've got a phone in their pocket. There is a statistic that talks about the financial barrier. It doesn't seem to be as high with phones. They see it as a necessity, and plans are fairly affordable at this point. People do drop their phone service for financial reasons, but primarily those groups are still purchasing, keeping, and using those as a lifeline. Majority of smartphone owners use their phones to follow along with breaking news, to share and be informed about happenings in their local community. That's where they're getting their information about their local community. And I think that's very important. I think if you're looking to mobilize groups of people, it's been proven that this is a good way to do it. You're going to reach them where they are. You can reach them instantly. You can push them notifications, and they have it right away. And basically, just smartphones help users navigate the world around them. You got turn-by-turn directions, assistance with public transit. It's true for younger users, and some of the statistics started at 6 years old. I would never hand a 6-year-old smartphone and say, here you go. But obviously, our kids use this technology. I don't like to hand my kids my phone. It's my phone. It's an expensive piece of technology. I use it for work. It's not a toy. But they have a tablet that they share. 2-year-old used a tablet for the first time. I don't have to tell them anything. He knew exactly what to do. You know, they see us do it, but that transfer I find amazing. So basically, in closing, if you have questions, I'd be happy to take them. But yeah, go ahead.
I've been out of this business since 1995. Maybe you want to tell me this privately, but what's the status of the university now with respect to this? The technology you're talking about, are we falling farther and farther behind? Are we keeping up? You're in a program that keeps up. But what about, I have a degree in English. What are they doing there?
Where?
In English.
I would say it's not that anybody, I don't think anybody's really falling vastly behind. I think there's a bit of a treading water going on. I don't think we know what's going to happen. I think, my feeling is, if institutions don't do something, there'll be a problem. But I do think there's an infrastructure problem as well, in that infrastructure has to change to accommodate, because what I've seen is that a lot of third-party providers have been used to try to help the situation with technology and bridge the gap, but all it's done is spend a lot of money to avoid changing infrastructure, and then when these third-party providers change, merge, fail, you still have an infrastructure problem. So I still see people looking for the right way to do it, but that there is a lot of effort. Yeah.
I've seen a little bit of a change or a trend where, you know, some of our younger people that are coming out of college or finishing college are very proficient in using, you know, your social media and things like that. And so immediately they're, you know, the next Mark Zuckerberg, I'm an expert, you know, I'm going to come to your company and I'm going to redefine this social media world and teach you dinosaurs how to use it properly. But what we're seeing then is individuals with very little experience in any other field, you know, no ability to kind of enter into that 9-to-5 workplace, no ability to kind of integrate, you know, these other skills. They can't communicate, you know, with you and I, and because their communication is done on this platform. And then when those things aren't necessarily as applicable to that business or that place, they're left going, well, what job is there for me? I'm a marketing expert, I'm a social media guru, and what do I do next? But they're lacking that interpersonal, you know, skill that you acquire, whether it be in an office setting or anything like that.
Yeah.
Are you seeing a lot of those statistics?
The number one requested skill from employers across all fields is communication. And I think there's probably a little bit of a misunderstanding between, well, I got a communication degree. I can communicate. No, that doesn't work that way. But there is a huge push for soft skills, or with their colleagues, soft skills, communication, teamwork, working with people. And then, I don't know that I consider this a soft skill necessarily, but if you learn anything, apparently, learn Excel, because that is a wanted skill. I just looked at some research about this, and you know, I don't know that the answer to solve that problem. I mean, I think they're looking to deliver soft skills workshops, soft skills education mobily, but there is also this hybrid mentorship push to pair people up, develop mentoring programs within organizations to develop some of those soft skills like that. But it's definitely, everybody is seeing that, and the demand is there. Yeah.
So I'm curious, you know, I'm an app user on my phone. How do you know for the most part that it's safe to use an app? Because I know there's flashlight apps and coupon apps, but is there a rigorous screening process that they have to go through?
Some of the shop, I mean, the two bigger ones, obviously Google Play and Apple. I think Apple's process is more stringent, I believe, and I actually don't have an iPhone. I love my Apple computers, but I've always been an Android user. The two big stores go through, I think, a pretty big review process, but yeah, you can put almost anything on an app store, you're right. Personally, I read the reviews, on them. I sort of look, we really quickly hit that install button. And I don't really know, in terms of the security, I don't think apps are probably very secure. I'm not going to enter my banking information into anything that's not my bank. I will say that, because you have so many options now to put a credit card on your phone. You can just zap it as you walk by the register. And I think caution is always good in that, and to wait a little bit. I like to wait and see what happens. 6 months, maybe 6 months. Something new comes out, wait 3 to 6 months. See how it goes. Did everybody get their information stolen? And I hate to sound negative, but I kind of feel like, and this has happened a lot, I have relatives who never put any information online. They've had their identity stolen far more than I have. I've never had my identity stolen that I know of. And I use online shopping everything. I have relatives who never enter any of their information online. They have had thousands of dollars spent in other countries. So I don't know that avoiding it all is the answer. I think it just depends. And you can be safe, you can be secure, you can be careful. Read the reviews, and usually the security information is in the, if you really look at the more information on the apps, there's a lot of information in there. And people are reviewing these things, and people are saying, well, this happened when I downloaded it. I don't think in terms of viruses and things, haven't been really developed, people who are developing viruses and things like that, I don't know that they've really developed them for mobile platforms as much. They're still attacking Microsoft, so. Yeah.
Just more of a comment. I'm in a business, real estate, where the average age of our agents is roughly 50 years old. But we're dealing with a new buyer segment, a new selling segment, with Gen Xers, millennials, Ys, whatever label we want to put on them. And our company has hired outside companies to come in and boost our social media presence, so that rather than trying to teach an old dog new tricks, so to speak, they're providing those services through a third party to them, so that they can update their Facebook and other social media, Twitter, and so forth. So I just think that's an interesting field where those people can now come in and fill that gap to enable us to better effectively communicate with our new clients.
And I think it works a lot better in the commercial world than what I've seen in education. I think the needs are different, and it's easier to have that third-party assistance. What I've seen in education is, because you want your university's voice to be what it is, it's hard to have someone who's not a part of your organization and a part of your university be that voice. We haven't really been able to use third-party providers for that kind of thing now. And then there's, for universities, I think, in education and schools, and not just higher ed, but K-12 too, is that there's the privacy issues become, I think, more prominent in those situations. And they tend to have, well, let's have a student do it. And that's not usually the answer. The student leaves after 6 months, you have to retrain someone. That happens a lot with social media. Let's have the intern do it. And it's almost, I feel like it's almost never a good idea to do that.
Talk a little bit about, you touched basically on the ethics piece, but really, anybody turned on the news the last couple of weeks, Apple's got this interesting dance they're doing with the federal government, and their lawyers that are making $100 grand an hour or testifying, and really, where do you see the role of this ethics? I mean, we talk about this in small mom and pop shops, small businesses. I mean, our community is not on the forefront of the technological revolution, and realistically, these legislations and these regulations are going to be handed down. Where do you see that playing a role? Again, as a community trying to catch up and make sure we stay on the cutting edge of that, where do we play a role, and how do we make sure we're falling in line with that ethics component?
Because and the thing with ethics, like maybe I went in ethics because I never had to have an answer. Like you just get to debate stuff, right? But I haven't actually decided how I feel about the Apple situation itself, because you've got national security and you've got a big corporation trying to really carve out the law at this point, because it's going to set a precedent. Whatever happens, it's going to set a precedent. And people keep asking questions like, well, what if it was this? Well, what if it was this? And that's situational ethics, and nobody likes situational ethics. So I think smaller communities, I actually don't think there's much that you can do other than wait. I mean, I think you're looking out for the best interest of your community. what can you do to help your community? I don't think anything that anybody does in this room that's community-minded is going to be against the law at any point. These things are going to be, you know, public utility level decisions and things like that. And I think the law will never keep up with technology. I just don't see it happening. I think technology will continue to blaze the trail, and law is going to lag behind, and these bigger incidences are going to happen, and then they're going to think about it. But I just don't see it keeping up. You know, we can't make legislation right now about anything. So, you know, but we're going to develop 10 new things by the end of the day. So I feel like if you're developing things for your community minded. That's your first primary thing. And nothing you do is really, the only issues I think you would look at are data collection, privacy issues. And there's really still not a lot of legislation on that. So we're not protected up here. You're probably providing more protection down here in the community by developing things that are really community minded. Oh, one of them.
Just real quick, Stacy, you talked a little bit about the security. So can you define whether or not you're on like a secured network, for instance, like your Wi-Fi connection, as opposed to just an app on cell service? Do you want to touch on that for a minute?
Oh, I'm sorry. What was the?
If you just want to touch on that for a minute, like if someone's on a secured network, meaning like they're on a Wi-Fi, as opposed to just on your app through your phone provider, your service providers.
Yeah.
Being more secure.
Yeah, so, in this building here, you've got a couple options for Wi-Fi. The one's the lock, the one's without the lock. That's what you're talking about, basically. Yeah, and I'm terrible about using the Wi-Fi. I rely on my data, I shouldn't. But you do have to be careful when you're out. If your phone's automatically set up to pick up any Wi-Fi signal that you're around, you don't know who could be looking at that. That is a bit of a security hole, and I think you do have to be mindful of it. I like to set my phone to choose whether I'm going to connect to the Wi-Fi or not. Yes, it saves your data, but you could be just pouring your information into all your pictures, all your everything off your phone. You could be pouring it into a bucket somewhere. So I would look for secure networks, and there are apps, I'm sure, that make your phone more secure. I'm personally not very careful about it. I should be better. It's one of those convenience things, like I'll pay for convenience. And I think that's something that we get used to, especially using these devices for everything. But there are you can secure up your phone. You can make it more private. There are options. But the biggest thing I would say is definitely watch your Wi-Fi connection. And if you're connected to Wi-Fi all the time, you probably should download something that is going to keep your information on your phone a little bit more secure. Yep.
What are some of your favorite, most useful apps that you use? You're obviously versed in apps that...
Oh boy, what do I use? Weather, traffic. I drive a lot. OGO is a great, OGO, those are what all the roads are. I'm pretty practical in my app use. I did use the meditation app. I haven't said. I use my devices a lot for email, social media, weather, traffic, and recipes. So, any other questions? Thank you guys.
Thank you, Stacy. There's a lot to think about. Thank you all for being here. We'll see you in April. We're talking about building intentional community. Thank you.